The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting long shadows across the marble floors that had once echoed with laughter. Harrison Wells stood at the window, his coffee growing cold in his hand, watching the city of Chicago awaken beneath him. The skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to ambition and dreams, things he'd once believed in with unwavering certainty. At 47, Harrison possessed the kind of success that made headlines. Wells' technology solutions had revolutionized data security systems, making him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the Midwest. His face had graced magazine covers, his name opened doors that remained closed to others, and his philanthropic endeavors had earned him accolades from every corner of society. Yet none of it mattered anymore. The envelope sat on his desk, its contents already memorized despite having read them only hours before. Dr. Patricia Caldwell's words were clinical, precise, devastating, progressive degenerative condition. 18 to 24 months. Quality of life will decline gradually. Recommend settling affairs. Harrison's hand trembled slightly as he set down the coffee cup. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd survived the car accident that had taken Catherine 3 years ago without a scratch, only to be betrayed by his own body now. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. "Dad?" The voice pulled him from his thoughts. Lily stood in the doorway, her auburn hair, so like her mother's, falling across her shoulders in waves. At 15, she was caught in that awkward space between childhood and adulthood, her features still soft with youth, but her eyes carrying depths that shouldn't exist in someone so young. The accident had stolen her mother, but it had also stolen something intangible from Lily. A lightness, an innocence that Harrison desperately wished he could restore. "You're up early," he said, forcing warmth into his voice. She shrugged, moving into the room with the cautious gait of someone accustomed to walking on eggshells. "Couldn't sleep. Are you okay? You look tired," he finished, smiling. "Just tired, sweetheart. Big day ahead." It wasn't entirely a lie. Every day felt enormous now, weighted with significance and the pressing awareness of finite time. But he couldn't tell her, not yet. "How did you explain to your daughter that the only parent she had left was dying? How did you prepare someone so young for another unbearable loss?" Lily moved to the window, standing beside him. Together they looked out over the city, and Harrison felt the overwhelming burden of everything he needed to teach her, everything he needed to say, pressing down on his shoulders like physical weight. "I was thinking," Lily said quietly, "maybe we could do something today." "Just us, like we used to." The simplicity of the request nearly broke him. When had they stopped doing things together? When had grief carved such a distance between them that his daughter felt she needed to ask permission for his time? "I'd like that," Harrison said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I'd like that very much." As Lily's face brightened with a smile, the first genuine one he'd seen in weeks, Harrison made a silent vow. Whatever time he had left, however many days or months the disease would grant him, he would use them wisely. Not to build his empire further or accumulate more wealth, but to give Lily something far more valuable, the tools to navigate the world without him, the strength to stand on her own, and the wisdom to understand that true wealth had nothing to do with money. He would teach her everything that mattered. He would show her what it meant to be good, to be kind, to leave the world better than you found it. He would pour every lesson, every value, every ounce of love into these final months, crafting a legacy that would outlive his body and sustain her through the years ahead. The envelope on his desk represented an ending, but standing beside his daughter, Harrison chose to see it as a beginning, perhaps the most important chapter of his life. He just hoped he had enough time. 3 weeks passed before Harrison began implementing his plan. The delay wasn't from hesitation but from careful consideration. He needed to approach this correctly, naturally, without alarming Lily or making her suspicious. The diagnosis remained his secret, locked away in a safe deposit box alongside his will and a series of letters he'd begun writing. "The Harrison Wells Foundation is launching a new initiative," he announced over breakfast one Saturday morning. Lily looked up from her phone, curiosity flickering across her features. "I want you to be part of it." "Me?" She set the device down. "Dad, I don't know anything about running a foundation." Neither did I when I started, Harrison said, spreading jam on his toast with deliberate casualness. That's why it's called learning. I'm not getting any younger, Lily. It's time I started showing you the parts of my life that matter most. The foundation had been Catherine's dream, established a year after Lily's birth. What had begun as a modest charitable effort had grown into a substantial organization, funding education initiatives, medical research, and community development projects across the country. Harrison had maintained it after Catherine's death, partly as a tribute to her memory, partly as penance for all the years he'd prioritized business over family. Now it would serve a new purpose. I don't know, Lily said hesitantly. School's pretty demanding and— This is more important than school, Harrison interrupted gently. This is about understanding that wealth isn't just numbers in a bank account. It's responsibility. It's opportunity. It's the chance to make a real difference in people's lives. Over the following weeks, Harrison brought Lily to the Foundation's offices downtown. The space occupied the 10th floor of a renovated warehouse in the West Loop, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood, deliberately designed to feel accessible rather than intimidating. The staff of 12 worked with passionate dedication, and Harrison watched as they gradually drew Lily into their world. Martha Green, the Foundation's director, became Lily's first real teacher in this new education. At 62, Martha possessed the rare combination of pragmatic efficiency and genuine compassion. She'd spent 40 years in nonprofit work, and her lined face told stories of battles fought and victories won. The thing about charity, Martha explained to Lily during one of their sessions, is that it's not about making yourself feel good. It's about actually solving problems. That means listening more than talking, understanding rather than assuming. Harrison observed from the periphery as Lily began reading grant applications, learning to distinguish between well-intentioned ideas and genuinely impactful programs. She struggled at first, overwhelmed by the scale of need represented in each proposal. But Martha's patient guidance helped her understand that they couldn't fix everything. They could only focus their resources where they'd make the most difference. One afternoon, Harrison found Lily in the conference room, surrounded by folders and looking frustrated. "There are too many," she said, gesturing at the applications. "How do you choose? Every single one of these is important. They're all people who need help." Harrison sat beside her, remembering when Catherine had asked him the same question years ago. "You're right, they're all important. But we have limited resources, which means we have to make difficult choices. That's the burden of having wealth, Lily. Every decision matters because every dollar we spend in one place is a dollar we can't spend somewhere else. So how do you decide? You ask yourself, where can we create the most lasting change? It's not always the most desperate need. Sometimes it's the project with the best structure, the strongest leadership, the greatest potential to become self-sustaining. He pulled one folder from the pile. Like this one, a community center in Englewood. They're not asking for us to fund everything. Indefinitely, they want seed money to establish programs that will eventually generate their own revenue through classes and events. Lily studied the application with new eyes. They're asking us to help them help themselves. Exactly. Harrison felt a surge of pride. That's the kind of thinking that creates real change. But the foundation work was only one piece of the education Harrison had planned. He began taking Lily to places she'd never seen, despite living her entire life in Chicago. They visited the Pacific Garden Mission, where Harrison volunteered regularly, something Lily hadn't known. They served meals to men and women whose lives had been derailed by circumstances both chosen and inflicted upon them. Harrison watched as Lily's initial discomfort transformed into genuine engagement, learning names, hearing stories, recognizing humanity in faces that society often preferred to ignore. "That man, Joseph," Lily said during the drive home, "he used to be a teacher. He has a master's degree in education." "How does someone with a master's degree end up homeless?" "1,000 different ways," Harrison replied. "Medical bankruptcy, mental illness, addiction, domestic violence, the loss of someone who held everything together. Life is more fragile than we like to believe, Lily. Any of us could be one or two catastrophes away from where Joseph is now. It's not fair." "No," Harrison agreed. "It's not." which is why people like us have an obligation to help rebuild the safety nets that should exist for everyone. These conversations continued throughout the spring. Harrison introduced Lily to dozens of people who worked in the trenches of social service, teachers in underfunded schools, nurses in free clinics, advocates for the homeless and forgotten. Each person offered a piece of the larger lesson Harrison was constructing. That privilege demanded responsibility. That true character revealed itself in how you treated those who could offer you nothing in return. But Harrison also knew that goodness wasn't just about grand gestures and charitable donations. It lived in smaller moments, quieter choices. He began pointing out opportunities for everyday kindness. When they stopped for coffee, he'd talk about learning the barista's name, asking about their day, tipping generously. When they encountered someone struggling, an elderly person navigating stairs, a parent wrestling with a stroller, he'd model helping without being asked, without expecting thanks. "Your mother used to say that character is what you do when no one's watching," Harrison told Lily one evening. "But I think it's more than that. Character is what you do when helping inconveniences you, when kindness costs you something, when doing the right thing is genuinely difficult." Lily absorbed these lessons with an intensity that both encouraged and worried Harrison. She was trying so hard, he realized, to become what she thought he wanted. But he didn't want her to perform goodness. He wanted her to understand it, to internalize it so deeply that kindness became her instinct rather than her obligation. The subtle changes in Lily's behavior told him the lessons were taking root. She began volunteering at the foundation without being asked, showing up on weekends to help Martha with filing and database management. She started a donation drive at her school, collecting supplies for the Pacific Garden mission. Small acts but genuine ones. Yet Harrison couldn't shake the awareness of time slipping away. The disease hadn't manifested obvious symptoms yet, but Dr. Caldwell had warned him that could change quickly. He found himself waking in the middle of the night, mentally cataloging everything he still needed to teach Lily, everything she still needed to learn. The weight of it threatened to overwhelm him, until he remembered something Catherine had said during one of their last conversations before the accident. "You can't protect her from everything, Harrison. The best you can do is give her the tools to protect herself." So he continued, day by day, lesson by lesson, building the foundation that would have to hold when he was gone. Summer arrived with characteristic Chicago humidity, and with it came an unexpected challenge to Harrison's carefully constructed plan. Lily announced at dinner one evening that she'd been invited to spend July with her best friend Madison's family at their lake house in Wisconsin. "It's 6 weeks," Lily said, her excitement palpable. "Madison's parents said I could bring my art supplies, and there's this amazing light there, apparently perfect for painting, and—" She stopped, reading Harrison's expression. "What's wrong?" Everything, Harrison thought. 6 weeks was an eternity given his timeline. 6 weeks of lessons lost, of moments he couldn't reclaim. But saying any of that would require explanations he wasn't ready to give. "Nothing's wrong," he said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. "It sounds wonderful." "Really?" Lily's joy dimmed slightly. "Because if you need me here for the foundation stuff—" "The foundation will survive without you for a summer," Harrison interrupted. "You're 15, Lily. You should be having adventures with your friends, not spending every day learning about grant applications." Yet after Lily went to bed, Harrison sat in his study, gripped by something close to panic. 6 weeks. He began calculating frantically. How many hours did he really have? If the disease progressed as Dr. Caldwell predicted, he might have 14 months of relative health before the decline became severe. 14 months. 420 days. Minus 42 for this trip. Suddenly every day felt precious beyond measure. He called Martha the next morning. "I need your advice," Harrison said without preamble. "Lily wants to spend the summer with friends. I should let her go, right? I should want her to have a normal teenage experience." Martha was quiet for a moment. "Harrison, is there something you're not telling me?" He'd never been good at hiding things from Martha. She'd worked with him for over a decade, had seen him through Catherine's death, had watched him struggle to maintain any semblance of work-life balance. Of everyone in his life, she might be the one person who could handle the truth. "I'm sick," he said simply. "Terminal. I have maybe 18 months, probably less." The silence on the other end stretched out. When Martha finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Oh, Harrison. Does Lily know?" "No, and I'm not telling her yet. I don't want her last memories of me to be... I want to teach her things, Martha. Important things. And 6 weeks feels like time I can't afford to lose." "But denying her the trip would require an explanation," Martha said gently. "And teenage experiences are important too. She needs to be a kid while she still can be." Harrison knew she was right, but the knowledge didn't ease the ache in his chest. They talked for another hour, Martha helping him reframe his thinking. This wasn't time lost. It was an opportunity for Lily to experience the kind of joy and normalcy he wanted her to remember having. And 6 weeks wasn't forever. He helped Lily pack 3 days later, adding extra spending money to her wallet and making her promise to call twice a week. Watching her drive away with Madison's family, Harrison felt the peculiar pain of loving someone enough to let them go, even when every instinct screamed to hold on tighter. The house felt impossibly empty without her. Harrison threw himself into work, both at Wells Technology Solutions and the Foundation. But without Lily as his focus, the daily fight against his diagnosis became harder. He started physical therapy, determined to maintain his strength as long as possible. He met with lawyers and financial advisors, ensuring that Lily's future would be secure regardless of what happened to his company. He wrote letters, dozens of them, each dated for some future milestone: her 16th birthday, graduation, wedding day, the birth of her first child. "These are morbid," he muttered to himself, sealing another envelope. But they were also necessary, a way to ensure that his voice, his guidance, would echo through her life long after he was gone. 2 weeks into Lily's absence, Harrison received an unexpected visitor. Daniel Chen had been his business partner in the early days of Wells Technology Solutions, before Harrison had bought him out to pursue a different vision. They'd parted on good terms, and Daniel had gone on to launch his own successful venture capital firm. But they hadn't spoken in years. "I heard," Daniel said simply when Harrison opened the door. "Martha called me. She thought you might need a friend." Harrison should have been angry about Martha's breach of confidence, but instead, he felt only gratitude. Over coffee, he and Daniel talked about everything: business, regrets, fear, legacy. "You know what my biggest regret is?" Daniel said. "That we never mended things properly. We were best friends, Harrison. We built something incredible together. Then ego and ambition got in the way, and we let years pass without really talking." "I thought you were angry about the buyout," Harrison admitted. "I was for about 6 months. Then I realized you'd actually done me a favor. I was never cut out for running a company day to day. I'm much better at identifying potential in others. But by the time I figured that out, we'd lost the friendship." The conversation planted a seed in Harrison's mind. How many relationships had he let deteriorate? How many people had he lost touch with because business had always come first? If he wanted to teach Lily about what truly mattered, perhaps he needed to demonstrate it more fully. Over the following weeks, Harrison began reaching out. Old friends from college, distant relatives, colleagues he'd worked with decades ago. Some conversations were awkward, some refreshingly easy, but each one reinforced a lesson he wanted Lily to understand. Relationships required maintenance and humility, and the courage to admit when you'd been wrong. When Lily called for their twice-weekly check-ins, Harrison found himself asking different questions than he had before. Not just, "Are you having fun?" but "What's the most interesting conversation you've had?" And "What's something you learned about Madison that you didn't know before?" Lily seemed puzzled by the change, but gradually opened up more. She talked about late-night conversations on the dock, about Madison's struggle with anxiety, about watching storms roll across the lake and feeling simultaneously small and connected to something vast. "I miss you," Lily said during one call. "Is that weird?" "I'm having an amazing time, but I miss you." "Not weird at all," Harrison said, his throat tight. "I miss you too, sweetheart. More than you know." When she finally returned in late July, tanned and radiating health, Harrison felt as if he were seeing her with new eyes. She'd grown in 6 weeks, not physically, but in some intangible way. There was a confidence in her movements, an ease in her smile that hadn't been there before. "Thank you for letting me go," Lily said, hugging him tightly. "I needed that." "I know," Harrison said, "but I'm glad you're home." That evening, they sat on the penthouse balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Harrison had planned to resume their lessons immediately, but found himself simply enjoying the moment. The sound of the city below, the warmth of the fading day, the presence of his daughter beside him. "Dad?" Lily said eventually. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Why did you and Mom wait so long to have me? I mean, you were both older than most of my friends' parents." Harrison considered the question carefully. "Your mother and I spent the first 10 years of our marriage building our careers. We thought success meant climbing higher, achieving more, accumulating more wealth and recognition. Then one day we looked around and realized we'd built this incredible life but had no one to share it with who truly mattered. So I was, what, a midlife crisis?" Harrison laughed. "You were the moment we both woke up and realized what was actually important. You were the best decision we ever made, Lily. Every single day with you has been a gift." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I wish I remembered her better. Sometimes I'm scared I'm forgetting." "You won't forget," Harrison said firmly. "She's in every kind thing you do, every creative impulse, every moment of compassion. She lives on through you." Later, alone in his study, Harrison reflected on the conversation. The disease had forced him to confront his mortality, but it had also clarified something essential. The only legacy that truly mattered was the one written in the hearts of those you loved. Everything else, the company, the money, the recognition, would fade and be forgotten. But if he could teach Lily to carry forward the best parts of him and Catherine, then perhaps death wasn't really an ending at all. It was a transformation, a continuation in a different form. August brought the first visible symptoms of Harrison's condition. Nothing dramatic. A tremor in his left hand that lasted 15 seconds. A moment of vertigo that forced him to sit down. A headache that no amount of medication could fully relieve. Dr. Caldwell had warned him this would happen. That the disease would announce itself in small ways before making its presence undeniable. Harrison became adept at hiding these episodes from Lily. He learned to keep his hands occupied, to sit down before dizziness could betray him, to retreat to his study when the headaches grew too severe. The deception felt necessary, a way of protecting her from worry, until he could no longer avoid the truth. But maintaining the facade grew exhausting. Harrison found himself calculating constantly. How much could he push himself without raising suspicion? How many activities could he maintain before the cracks became visible? "You seem tired," Lily observed one morning. "Are you sleeping okay?" "Fine," Harrison lied. "Just busy with work." In truth, work had become increasingly difficult. The sharp focus that had made him a successful entrepreneur was dulling, replaced by a frustrating fog that made concentration a challenge. Harrison began delegating more responsibilities to his executive team, framing it as preparing for eventual retirement, rather than admitting his capability was slipping. "About time," said Robert Fitzgerald, his CFO, when Harrison announced the restructuring. "You've been talking about stepping back for years. Nice to see you actually doing it." If only Robert knew the real reason, Harrison thought. With business gradually shifting off his shoulders, Harrison dedicated more energy to Lily's education. He created what he privately called the Legacy Project, a series of experiences designed to teach essential life lessons. The first took them to the South Side, to a community garden project the foundation had funded 3 years earlier. The plot of land had been a vacant lot, notorious for dumping and drug activity. Now it bloomed with vegetables and flowers, maintained by residents who transformed it into the neighborhood's heart. "This is Ms. Washington," Harrison said, introducing Lily to a woman in her 70s whose hands were stained with soil. "She's the one who made this possible." Evelyn Washington had approached the foundation with a simple proposal. Give the community resources to beautify their own neighborhood. And they'd prove that disinvestment, not deficiency, was the real problem in struggling areas. The foundation had provided funding for soil, seeds, tools, and a part-time coordinator. The community had provided everything else: labor, vision, commitment. "We didn't need someone to save us," Ms. Washington explained to Lily as they walked between raised beds heavy with tomatoes and squash. "We needed someone to believe in us and get out of our way." Lily helped harvest vegetables that afternoon, listening to stories from residents who'd reclaimed their neighborhood through collective effort. Harrison watched her absorb the lesson, that the most meaningful change came from empowering people rather than imposing solutions from above. "Why don't more people do this?" Lily asked on the drive home. "It seems so obvious. Help communities help themselves. Because it requires patience and humility," Harrison said. "It's easier to swoop in with a big check and a ribbon-cutting ceremony than to build genuine partnerships. It's more satisfying to be the hero than to be the supporting character in someone else's story of success." The next lesson came through personal confession. Harrison took Lily to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, a place he and Catherine had frequented when they were young and poor and madly in love. "I need to tell you about some mistakes I made," Harrison said over pasta. "Big ones." Lily looked up, surprised. "What kind of mistakes?" "When I was building the company, I made choices that seemed necessary at the time, but that I'm not proud of now. I worked 100-hour weeks and missed most of your early childhood. I prioritized deals over family dinners. I let ambition make me a different person than I wanted to be." "But you were successful," Lily said. "You built an incredible company." "Yes. And in the process, I lost years with you and your mother that I can never get back." "Success is important, Lily, but not at the cost of the people you love. I learned that too late." Harrison talked about specific regrets. The time he'd missed Lily's first steps because of a business trip, the anniversary he'd forgotten, the countless small moments he'd sacrificed in pursuit of larger goals. "I'm telling you this because I want you to learn from my mistakes rather than repeat them," Harrison continued. "Whatever you do with your life, whatever path you choose, never let it make you forget what actually matters. Money, status, achievement, they're all empty if you're too busy earning them to actually enjoy life." Lily was quiet for a long moment. "Is that why you've been spending so much time with me lately? Teaching me about the foundation and everything?" Harrison's heart clenched. "Partly. But mostly because I finally learned what I should have known all along. That time with you is more valuable than any business deal or financial success." The conversation marked a subtle shift in their relationship. Lily began asking deeper questions, pushing back against some of Harrison's lessons, developing her own philosophy rather than simply absorbing his. "I think you're too hard on yourself," she said one evening as they reviewed grant applications. "You made mistakes, but you also built something that helps a lot of people. The foundation wouldn't exist without the company's success." "Perhaps," Harrison conceded. "But I could have built both, the business and the relationships, if I'd been wiser about balance." September arrived with cooling temperatures and the start of Lily's sophomore year. Harrison had planned to continue their intensive lesson schedule, but Lily had commitments: school, art club, a position on the student council. Watching her navigate these normal teenage responsibilities, Harrison realized that this too was education. Learning to balance competing demands, to show up for commitments, to build community in small ways. These were lessons life would teach if he let it. Still, he carved out Sunday afternoons as their dedicated time. They'd explore different neighborhoods, visit museums, volunteer at various organizations. Harrison was building a map of Chicago's best and worst, its hidden treasures and forgotten corners, all while weaving in lessons about history, inequality, resilience, and hope. One Sunday, they found themselves at a nursing home on the north side, where the foundation funded an art therapy program. Lily spent 2 hours with residents, helping them paint and listening to their stories. Harrison watched her genuine engagement. No phone, no distraction, just presence and attention. "That woman, Mrs. Kowalski, told me about immigrating from Poland after World War II," Lily said later. "She was 15, my age, and came here alone. Her entire family died in the war. Can you imagine? It's hard to comprehend that kind of loss," Harrison said quietly. "She said the thing that saved her was deciding to help other refugees get settled. Even though she had nothing, she shared what little she had. She said giving made her feel human again." Harrison felt a surge of hope. Lily was connecting the dots herself now, seeing the patterns that linked all their experiences. That meaning came from connection, that healing came from helping, that the antidote to despair was often action. But that night, alone in his bathroom, Harrison experienced another episode. This one lasted longer, nearly a minute of tremors so severe he had to grip the sink to stay upright. When it finally passed, He stared at his reflection and saw what he'd been trying to ignore. He was running out of time faster than anticipated. Dr. Caldwell confirmed it at his next appointment. The disease was progressing more rapidly than average. She adjusted her timeline, 12 to 15 months now, possibly less. "You need to consider telling your daughter," Dr. Caldwell said gently. "These symptoms will become harder to hide, and she deserves time to prepare." Harrison knew she was right, but every time he imagined having that conversation, his courage failed. "How did you tell your child you were dying? How did you break her heart a second time?" Not yet, he told himself. Not until he'd given her every lesson, shared every piece of wisdom, built every memory he possibly could. Just a little more time. October painted Chicago in shades of rust and gold, and with the changing season came a new dimension to Harrison's teaching. He decided it was time to show Lily the full scope of wealth's responsibility, not just the charitable giving, but the complex ethical questions that came with significant financial power. "I want to show you something," Harrison said one Saturday morning. "Something I've never shown anyone except my lawyers and accountants." He led her into his study and opened a private database on his computer. Numbers filled the screen. Investments, holdings, assets distributed across dozens of accounts and vehicles. "This is everything I own," Harrison explained. "Every stock, every bond, every property, every investment." "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" Lily stared at the figures, her eyes widening. "Dad, this is... I knew we had money, but this is more than anyone needs," Harrison finished. "Which is precisely why it comes with enormous responsibility. Every investment decision is also an ethical decision. Where we put our money supports certain industries, certain practices. It's not neutral." Over the next several weeks, Harrison walked Lily through his investment philosophy. He showed her how he'd divested from private prisons, fossil fuel companies, and manufacturers with questionable labor practices. He explained the concept of impact investing, seeking returns while also creating positive social or environmental outcomes. "Some people will tell you that business is business, that ethics and investing don't mix," Harrison said. "They're wrong. Or rather, they're making a choice to prioritize profit over principle. You'll have to decide what kind of investor you want to be." They attended shareholder meetings together, where Harrison introduced Lily to the mechanics of corporate governance. She watched him challenge executives about labor practices, environmental policies, board diversity. Sometimes his questions were welcomed. More often, they provoked defensive responses. "Why do they get so angry?" Lily asked after one particularly contentious meeting. "You're a major shareholder. They should listen to you." "Because I'm asking them to prioritize something other than maximizing short-term profits," Harrison explained. "The current system rewards quarterly earnings above everything else. Trying to inject long-term thinking or ethical considerations disrupts that equation." But Harrison also showed her the flip side. Companies doing remarkable things. Businesses built on genuine value creation rather than exploitation. They visited a B Corporation in Milwaukee that manufactured sustainable building materials, toured a worker-owned cooperative in Gary, met with social entrepreneurs building businesses designed to solve problems rather than just generate wealth. "These are the companies I want you to support," Harrison said. "Organizations that prove you can do well by doing good. That wealth creation and positive impact aren't mutually exclusive." Lily absorbed these lessons with characteristic intensity, but Harrison noticed a growing anxiety in her demeanor. She was quieter than usual, more withdrawn. He'd catch her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, her expression troubled. Finally, one evening in late October, she confronted him. "Dad, are you sick?" The question landed like a physical blow. Harrison had been so careful, so vigilant about hiding his symptoms. How had she noticed? "What makes you ask that?" he said, stalling. "You're different. You move more slowly. Sometimes your hand shakes. You sit down a lot more than you used to. And you're teaching me all these things like..." She paused, struggling for words. "Like you're preparing me for something." Harrison closed his eyes. He'd known this moment would come, had rehearsed various versions of this conversation, but nothing had prepared him for the actual reality of it. "I wanted to wait," he said quietly. "I wanted to give you more time before you had to carry this knowledge." "Dad, you're scaring me." There was no kind way to say it, no gentle version of this truth. "I'm dying, Lily. I have a degenerative neurological condition. The doctors say I have maybe a year, possibly less." The color drained from Lily's face. She stood frozen for a moment, then began shaking her head. No, that's not. You're fine. You're healthy. This is some kind of—" "I'm not fine," Harrison said gently, moving toward her. "I wish I were, but I'm not. And I'm so sorry." What followed was one of the hardest nights of Harrison's life. Lily cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, grief, sometimes all within the same minute. She raged at him for not telling her sooner, for lying by omission, for putting her through this again. She wept in his arms, her body racked with sobs that seemed to come from some primal depth of loss. "I can't do this again," she kept saying. "I can't lose you too." "I can't. I know," Harrison whispered, holding her. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Eventually, exhausted by emotion, Lily fell asleep on the couch, her head in Harrison's lap. He sat awake through the night, stroking her hair, memorizing the weight of her, the sound of her breathing, the trust implicit in her ability to sleep despite everything. When morning came, Lily was different, older somehow, as if the news had aged her overnight. They sat at the kitchen table, barely touching their breakfast, the new reality settling around them like heavy snow. "How long have you known?" Lily asked. "Since April, 6 months. "You've known for 6 months and didn't tell me." "I wanted to protect you," Harrison said. "And I wanted time to teach you things without the shadow of death hanging over every lesson. I wanted you to learn because the lessons mattered, not because your father was dying." Lily was quiet for a long time. "Is that what all this has been? The foundation, the volunteering, the investment stuff? Your way of preparing me?" "Yes. I wanted to give you the tools to navigate the world without me, to show you what truly matters, to pass on whatever wisdom I've accumulated." Harrison reached across the table to take her hand. "I know it's not enough. There's never enough time to say everything that needs saying, to share everything that needs sharing. But I'm trying, Lily. I'm trying to leave you equipped for whatever comes after." "I don't want to be equipped," Lily said, her voice breaking. "I want you to stay. I know. Believe me, I know." They spent the rest of the weekend talking about the disease, the timeline, the plan for his care as he declined. Harrison showed her the letters he'd written, explained the provisions he'd made for her future. Lily listened with an eerie calm that worried Harrison more than tears would have. On Sunday evening, as they sat together watching the sun set over the city, Lily asked the question Harrison had been dreading. "Do you regret it? The business, the success, all of it? If you could go back, would you choose differently?" Harrison considered carefully. "I don't regret building the company or creating wealth. I regret the years I didn't understand that wealth is only meaningful if you use it to enrich life, yours and others. I regret prioritizing achievement over presence. But I don't regret the journey that led me here to this moment with you. Everything I did, every choice I made, brought me to you. So no, I wouldn't choose differently. I just tried to understand sooner what you're learning now. What am I learning? That love matters more than legacy. That being good matters more than being successful. That the richest life isn't measured in dollars but in the positive impact you have on others." He pulled her close. "You're learning what took me 40 years to understand. Lily, that's my real legacy. Not the money I'll leave you, but the person you're becoming." That night, after Lily went to bed, Harrison sat alone in his study and allowed himself to grieve. Not for himself, his time was coming to an end, and he'd made peace with that. But for Lily, who would have to face so much of life without parents to guide her. The weight of that knowledge was almost unbearable. But he couldn't afford to collapse under it. He still had work to do, lessons to teach, time to spend. The revelation had changed the nature of their remaining months together, added urgency and poignancy to every moment, but it hadn't changed his fundamental mission. He would continue teaching, continue sharing, continue preparing her as best he could. It was all he could do, and it would have to be enough. November brought a new intensity to Harrison and Lily's time together. With the truth no longer hidden, they approached each day with conscious appreciation, aware that the mundane could become precious, that ordinary moments might be their last opportunities for certain shared experiences. Lily insisted on accompanying Harrison to his medical appointments, sitting beside him as Dr. Caldwell explained treatment options, none curative, all designed merely to slow progression and manage symptoms. She asked detailed questions about timelines, about what to expect as the disease advanced, about the practical realities of care. "You don't have to do this," Harrison said after one particularly difficult appointment. "You're 15. You should be focused on school and friends and—" "Where else would I be?" Lily interrupted. "You're my dad. I'm not leaving you to face this alone." Her resolve both humbled and worried Harrison. He didn't want her to become a caregiver at 15, didn't want the disease to steal her adolescence. Yet he also recognized that he couldn't control how she chose to process this experience. "We need to find balance," Harrison said carefully. "Yes, we're dealing with something terrible. But I don't want my illness to consume your entire life. You still need to be a teenager, Lily. That's important, too." They negotiated a compromise. Lily would attend major appointments and be included in decisions about Harrison's care. But she'd also maintain her normal activities: school, art club, time with friends. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like the right balance between honoring her need to be involved and protecting her from being overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Harrison continued what he now openly called the lessons. Without the need for secrecy, he could be more direct about his intentions, more explicit about the wisdom he hoped to impart. One lesson focused on forgiveness. Harrison took Lily to meet Gordon Mitchell, his former business partner who'd sued him 15 years earlier over a patent dispute. The lawsuit had been bitter and public, ending with Harrison's victory, but also with the destruction of a once strong friendship. "I've asked Gordon to meet us," Harrison explained as they sat in a coffee shop, "because I want you to see me do something I should have done years ago." When Gordon arrived, gray-haired and wary, Harrison stood to greet him. "Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to." "Curiosity got the better of me," Gordon said, sitting down. "Your assistant said it was important." Harrison glanced at Lily, then back to Gordon. "I've been doing some reflecting lately, thinking about my life and the relationships I've damaged. Our friendship was important to me, Gordon. What happened between us, the lawsuit, the anger, the years of silence, I bear responsibility for that. I was arrogant and stubborn, convinced I was entirely in the right. I'm sorry. You deserve better from me." Gordon stared at him, clearly stunned. "Harrison, This is unexpected. I'm dying," Harrison said simply. "And I'm trying to make peace with my past before I run out of time. I'm not asking you to forget what happened or even to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I regret how I handled things. You were my friend, and I should have valued that friendship more than being right." The conversation that followed was awkward and emotional, both men navigating years of hurt and resentment. Eventually, Gordon's defensiveness cracked, revealing his own regrets about their falling out. "I pushed the lawsuit partly out of pride," Gordon admitted. "You'd moved on to such success and I felt left behind. The patent was an excuse to strike back at you." "Then we both made mistakes," Harrison said. They didn't leave as best friends. Too much time had passed, too much damage had been done. But they left as people who'd acknowledged shared humanity, who'd chosen understanding over bitterness. As Gordon departed, he turned back. "I'm sorry about your illness, Harrison. And I'm glad we talked. I mean that." In the car afterward, Lily was quiet for several blocks. Finally, she said, "That was brave. Admitting you were wrong, apologizing even though you won the lawsuit." "It wasn't brave, it was necessary," Harrison replied. "Pride is easy, Lily. Pride costs nothing in the moment but extracts enormous prices over time. Humility, on the other hand, is difficult and uncomfortable, but it's the only path to genuine relationships and peace. Remember that." Another lesson centered on mortality itself. Harrison took Lily to Graceland Cemetery, walking among graves of Chicago's notable citizens. Architects, entrepreneurs, civic leaders. "Death is terrifying," Harrison said as they stood before a particularly elaborate mausoleum. "It's natural to fear it, to try to deny it. But mortality is also what makes life precious. If we lived forever, nothing would have meaning. It's the finite nature of our time that makes our choices matter." "How can you be so calm about dying?" Lily asked, her voice breaking. "Aren't you scared? Terrified, Harrison admitted. Not of death itself, but of leaving you. Of all the moments I'll miss, all the milestones I won't see. That fear is constant, a weight I carry every minute. But I can't let that fear paralyze me or steal the time I have left. So I choose to focus on what I can do, rather than what I can't change. They sat on a bench overlooking a pond where ducks paddled peacefully. Harrison talked about his hopes for Lily's future, about the kind of life he wanted her to build. I want you to find meaningful work, whatever that looks like for you. I want you to build deep relationships based on authenticity and mutual care. I want you to use your resources, and you'll have considerable resources, to make the world better in whatever ways resonate with you. I want you to fall in love with someone who sees and values the real you. I want you to experience joy, Lily, deep, bone-level joy. That's what I want for you. What if I can't? Lily whispered. What if losing you breaks something in me that can't be fixed? Harrison turned to face her fully. Loss will change you. Grief will shape you. That's unavoidable. But you're stronger than you know, Lily. You survived losing your mother. You'll survive losing me. And eventually, not immediately, but eventually, you'll find your way back to joy. I truly believe that. As November progressed, Harrison began introducing Lily to the network of people who would support her after he was gone. Martha, of course, who'd already become a mentor and friend. Daniel Chen, who'd promised to provide business guidance. Harrison's attorney, his accountant, trusted employees at the foundation. These people care about you, Harrison explained. They're not replacing me, no one can. But they're a community you can lean on when you need help or advice or just someone to talk to. He also encouraged Lily to strengthen her existing relationships. She began spending more time with Madison, opening up about her father's illness. The friendship deepened, Madison's family essentially adopting Lily as their own, offering the kind of everyday normalcy that Harrison's household increasingly lacked. One evening, Harrison overheard Lily on the phone with Madison, crying about how unfair everything was, how much she hated the disease, how scared she was of what was coming. He should have felt hurt by her candor with someone else, but instead he felt grateful. She needed spaces to fall apart where she didn't have to be strong for him. As the month drew to a close, Harrison organized a formal dinner party, something he hadn't done since Catherine's death. He invited the key people in their lives, Martha, Daniel, several foundation board members, close family friends. It was partly social, partly strategic. Harrison wanted these people to see Lily comfortable in this role, wanted them to recognize her growing maturity and capability. Watching Lily navigate the evening, engaging in meaningful conversation with adults, asking thoughtful questions, demonstrating the lessons she'd learned over the past months, Harrison felt immense pride. She was becoming the person he'd hoped she'd be, thoughtful, compassionate, engaged with the world rather than insulated from it. After the guests left as they cleaned up together, Lily said, "That was nice. Being around people who care about us." It was, Harrison agreed. Community matters, Lily. No one thrives in isolation. Whatever happens, remember that you have people who love you and want to help you succeed. That night, lying in bed and reviewing the day, Harrison felt a glimmer of peace. He wouldn't live to see Lily's full potential realized, wouldn't be there for countless important moments. But he'd given her a foundation, not just financial, but moral and emotional and practical. He'd shown her what mattered, introduced her to people of character, modeled the kind of person he hoped she'd become. It wasn't enough, it would never be enough, but it was something. And in the face of inevitable loss, something was everything. December arrived with unexpected news that would alter everything. Harrison was reviewing foundation reports when Martha called, her voice tight with excitement. "Harrison, we have a situation. A good situation, but complicated. Can you come to the office?" An hour later, Harrison and Lily sat in the foundation's conference room as Martha explained. The Brennan estate, you remember Edward Brennan, the hotel magnate? His family has decided to liquidate his philanthropic holdings. They're offering us first option on acquiring the Brennan Community Initiative, which runs 23 community centers across the Midwest. How much are they asking? Harrison said. $50 million for the entire operation, including properties, endowments, and existing programs. It's an extraordinary opportunity, Harrison. These centers serve over 100,000 people annually, but Martha hesitated. It comes with conditions. The family wants the acquisition completed within 90 days, and they want assurance of continued operation for at least a decade. Harrison's mind raced. $50 million was substantial but manageable. The real challenge would be the operational expansion. Taking on 23 centers would triple the foundation's scope, requiring new staff, systems, oversight. "Can we do it?" Lily asked, looking between her father and Martha. "Financially, yes," Harrison said. "Operationally, it would be enormous. We'd need to hire aggressively, potentially relocate staff, definitely implement new management systems." "But imagine the impact," Martha said, her eyes shining. "These centers provide childcare, job training, health services, after-school programs. We'd be expanding our reach dramatically." Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison threw himself into due diligence, bringing Lily along for every step. They visited community centers in Milwaukee, Detroit, Indianapolis, St. Louis. They reviewed financial records, met with program directors, talked to community members about what the centers meant to their neighborhoods. What Harrison saw convinced him the opportunity was genuine. These weren't failing operations being dumped. They were thriving programs that the Brennan family simply couldn't maintain without Edward's guiding vision. With proper management, they could continue flourishing. But there was a problem Harrison hadn't shared with anyone: his declining capability. The disease was progressing faster now. He experienced multiple episodes daily: tremors, vertigo, confusion that lasted minutes. He'd begun taking stronger medications that helped manage symptoms but left him exhausted. The idea of overseeing a massive expansion while his health deteriorated seemed impossible. "You need to make a decision," Dr. Caldwell said during his December appointment. "Your condition is advancing more quickly than anticipated. Within 3 to 6 months, you'll need to step back from active management of everything. You should be arranging your affairs, not taking on new responsibilities." But the opportunity felt like fate. Here was a chance to expand the foundation's impact far beyond what Harrison had imagined, to create something lasting that would continue growing long after his death. How could he walk away from that? The answer came during a conversation with Lily. They were reviewing financial projections late one evening when she looked up from the spreadsheets. "Dad, why does this have to be your project? Why can't it be mine?" Harrison stared at her. "What do you mean? You've been teaching me everything about running the foundation, about evaluating programs, about financial management. What if—" She paused, gathering courage. "What if this acquisition is how I prove I've learned? What if I lead this expansion?" "Lily, you're 15. You can't legally—" "I know I can't sign contracts or make binding decisions. But you and Martha can handle the legal stuff. I'm talking about the actual work. Visiting centers, meeting with staff, developing implementation plans. Let me do this, Dad. Let me show you I'm ready." The idea was audacious and slightly terrifying. But looking at his daughter, at her determination, her emerging competence, her desperate need to prove herself capable, Harrison saw the opportunity within the opportunity. This could be the ultimate lesson, not taught through observation, but through experience, not given as instruction, but earned through effort. It would be hard, Harrison warned. People won't take you seriously because of your age. You'll face resistance and skepticism. And the timeline is brutal, 90 days to complete acquisition and begin integration. "I know," Lily said. "But I want to try. Please, Dad. Let me try." Harrison discussed it with Martha, who was initially skeptical but gradually came around to the idea. "She'd need tremendous support," Martha said. "And we'd need to be realistic about what she can actually handle." "But Harrison, if she pulls this off, even partially, imagine what that would do for her confidence." They structured it carefully. Harrison would technically lead the acquisition, handling all legal and financial aspects. Martha would oversee operations and serve as Lily's direct supervisor. But Lily would be given substantial responsibility for due diligence, staff integration, and program assessment. "This is not pretend," Harrison told Lily when they finalized the plan. "You'll be doing real work with real consequences. If you make mistakes, you'll have to fix them. If you fail, the foundation and the communities we serve will suffer. Are you sure you want this responsibility?" Lily's response was to dive into the project with fierce intensity. She created detailed schedules, studied every document related to the Brennan Centers, developed questions for staff interviews. She began rising at 5 in the morning to work before school, spending evenings on conference calls with center directors. Harrison watched in amazement as his teenage daughter transformed into something resembling an executive. She made mistakes, certainly, approached situations with teenage directness that required diplomatic cleanup, got overwhelmed by the scope and needed Martha's guidance to refocus. But she also demonstrated remarkable capability, asking insightful questions, identifying problems others had missed, earning respect through genuine engagement. The acquisition process revealed aspects of Lily's character Harrison hadn't fully appreciated. She was meticulous about details, refusing to accept superficial answers when deeper investigation was needed. She built rapport quickly with center staff, particularly with the frontline workers whose voices often went unheard in organizational decisions. She thought creatively about solutions, unencumbered by assumptions about how things had always been done. One evening in mid-December, they visited a struggling center in Gary, Indiana. The facility needed major repairs, and the staff was exhausted from trying to maintain programs with inadequate resources. Lily spent 3 hours listening to their concerns, taking detailed notes, asking what they needed to succeed. "We have funding to make improvements," she told them, "but I want to know what you think should be prioritized. You're the ones doing this work every day." Driving home, Harrison said, "You handled that well. Better than I would have, probably." "Really?" Lily looked surprised. "Really. I tend to come in with solutions already formed. You asked and listened first. That's wiser." The praise seemed to fortify Lily, giving her confidence to take on even more responsibility. By late December, she was essentially managing the day-to-day acquisition process, with Martha and Harrison providing oversight, but allowing her to lead. The transformation wasn't just professional. The project gave Lily purpose beyond grief, a focus beyond her father's illness. She still had hard days, still cried about what was coming, but the work provided structure and meaning that made the waiting more bearable. For Harrison, watching Lily flourish was bittersweet. He was proud beyond measure, but also acutely aware that this success proved she'd be okay without him. Which was exactly what he'd hoped for, even as it broke his heart. On Christmas Eve, as they reviewed the final acquisition documents that would be signed after the holidays, Lily looked up with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said, "for letting me do something real." "Thank you for being worthy of that trust," Harrison replied. "You've exceeded every expectation, Lily. You've proven you're ready for the responsibility that's coming." They both knew he meant more than just the foundation. He meant the life she'd have to build without him, the decisions she'd have to make alone, the adult role she'd have to assume too soon. The acquisition would proceed. The centers would expand, and Lily would continue growing into the extraordinary person she was becoming. Harrison just wished he could be around to see it. January brought both the new year and the final phase of the acquisition. Harrison's health continued its steady decline. The tremors were now constant, his balance unreliable, his energy depleting rapidly. He'd begun using a cane, framing it to Lily as just precautionary, though they both knew the truth. Dr. Caldwell had adjusted her timeline again. 6 months, maybe 8. The disease was aggressive, and Harrison's relatively young age paradoxically worked against him. His body had fewer natural decline processes to mask the neurological deterioration. "We should start discussing end-of-life care," Dr. Caldwell said gently during his January appointment. "Hospice options, palliative care preferences." Harrison nodded, making notes on his phone while Lily sat beside him, her face pale. These conversations were devastating, planning for his death with clinical precision. But they were also necessary, a final gift he could give Lily, clarity about his wishes so she wouldn't have to make impossible decisions alone. Meanwhile, the acquisition moved toward completion. The Brennan family lawyers had approved the foundation's proposal, contingent on final inspections and staff agreements. Lily coordinated much of this work, traveling to centers with Martha, conducting interviews, assessing facilities. Harrison accompanied them when he could, but increasingly he had to participate remotely, his presence via video conference rather than in person. It galled him to be sidelined, but it also provided opportunities to see Lily operate independently. She'd grown remarkably in a few short months. Where she'd once been tentative and questioning, she now made decisions with confidence. Where she'd once deferred to adults automatically, she now engaged as an equal, pushing back when she disagreed, advocating for her positions with well-reasoned arguments. During one particularly contentious meeting about staffing transitions, a center director dismissed Lily's concerns about maintaining program continuity. "We've been doing this for 20 years, the director said condescendingly. "I think we know better than a teenager what our community needs." Lily didn't flinch. "With respect, the data shows your programs have declining participation rates over the past 5 years. That suggests either changing community needs or delivery problems. I'm not questioning your dedication. I'm asking if we should examine whether current approaches are still optimal." The director, properly chastised, agreed to conduct a comprehensive program review. After the call ended, Martha laughed. "Did you see his face? He wasn't expecting to get schooled by a 15-year-old. 16, Lily corrected. Her birthday had passed quietly in early January, marked only by a small dinner with Harrison and Martha. "And I was polite about it." "You were perfect," Harrison said. "Firm but respectful. That's the balance you need to strike. Don't let people dismiss you because of your age. But don't use your age as a shield either." As the acquisition neared completion, Harrison began introducing a new element to Lily's education, the personal side of wealth management. One Saturday, he took her to his attorney's office to review the full scope of the estate she'd inherit. "This is everything," Harrison said, gesturing to the documents spread across the conference table. "The company, which you'll own controlling interest in. The foundation, which you'll chair. The investment portfolio. The real estate. The personal accounts." The numbers were staggering. Even Lily, who'd been living with wealth her entire life, seemed overwhelmed by the magnitude. "I don't want it," she said quietly. "Not like this. Not because you're dying." "I know," Harrison said gently. "But it's coming regardless of what either of us wants. The question isn't whether you'll inherit this wealth. It's whether you'll be prepared to manage it responsibly." They spent hours discussing the structures Harrison had put in place. Trusts designed to provide income while preserving principal, advisory boards to help guide her decisions, graduated access that would increase as she aged and gained experience. "I've tried to build safeguards," Harrison explained. "People will try to take advantage of you, some maliciously, some with good intentions but bad judgment. You'll need to learn who to trust and how to verify that trust." "How do I do that?" "Slowly, carefully, by building relationships over time, watching how people act when there's nothing to gain, by consulting multiple advisors and looking for consensus, by staying educated so you can't be easily fooled." Harrison paused. "And by remembering that it's okay to say no, to ask for time, to admit you don't know something." They role-played various scenarios, investment pitches, charitable requests, business proposals. Harrison coached Lily on questions to ask, red flags to watch for, strategies for extracting herself from uncomfortable situations. "You're going to make mistakes," Harrison said. "Everyone does. The key is making sure your mistakes are recoverable, that you don't risk everything on any single decision." Another crucial lesson involved the company itself. Harrison had been preparing his executive team for transition, but he wanted Lily to understand the business that had created their wealth. "I don't expect you to run Wells Technology Solutions," Harrison said during a tour of the company's headquarters. "We have excellent people who do that, but you need to understand it enough to ask intelligent questions, to evaluate whether leadership is serving the company's best interests." They met with department heads, reviewed financial statements, discussed the competitive landscape. Harrison watched Lily absorb information, asking clarifying questions, making connections between different aspects of the business. "What happens if I want to sell it?" Lily asked. "The company, I mean." Harrison had anticipated this question. "You can, though I'd encourage you to wait at least a few years, until you're old enough to fully understand the implications. The company employs over 3,000 people, Lily. Whatever you decide about its future affects all their lives. That's a lot of responsibility." "It is. Which is why I want you to feel free to seek advice from people with more experience. There's no shame in admitting you need help." As January progressed, Harrison also focused on more personal lessons, the kind that couldn't be taught through business meetings or foundation work. He taught Lily to cook, sharing recipes that had been Catherine's favorites. They spent Sunday afternoons in the kitchen, Harrison talking Lily through techniques while sharing stories about her mother. "She made this risotto on our first anniversary," Harrison said, demonstrating the constant stirring required. "We were so poor we could barely afford the ingredients, but she insisted we needed to celebrate properly." "Was she a good cook?" Lily asked. "Terrible," Harrison admitted, laughing. "But she tried, and that mattered. Some of our best memories are of meals that didn't quite work out but were made with love." He taught her about maintaining the penthouse, about the small rituals that would help her feel connected to home after he was gone, where important documents were stored, how to work the complicated sound system, which plants needed daily attention and which could survive benign neglect. "These seem like small things," Harrison said. "But they matter. After I'm gone, you'll need to build a life in this space without me. I want you to feel comfortable here, not haunted." They also worked on her art together, something they'd rarely done before. Harrison had no artistic talent, but he'd sit in Lily's studio while she painted, offering companionship and occasional commentary. "Your mother had such natural creativity," Harrison said one afternoon, watching Lily work on a landscape. "I always envied that. My brain works in straight lines and logic. She saw possibilities I couldn't imagine." "You're creative in other ways," Lily said. "The foundation programs you've designed, the business strategies, those take creativity too. Perhaps. But it's not the same as making something beautiful from nothing." Harrison gestured at the canvas. "You have her gift, Lily. Don't neglect it in the pursuit of everything else." One particularly difficult conversation came near the end of January. Harrison knew he needed to discuss his funeral wishes, to spare Lily from having to guess what he'd want. "I don't want anything elaborate," Harrison said as they sat in his study. "No public memorial with speeches from people who barely knew me. Just a simple service with the people we care about." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I know this is hard, but I need you to know what I want. I don't want you spending months agonizing over decisions I could have made clear." He handed her a document. "Everything's written here. Burial preferences, music selections, even the caterer I'd like you to use for the reception." "There's going to be a reception?" "People will need to eat and talk and share stories. That's how we process loss, through community and shared memory." Harrison took her hand. "I want my funeral to celebrate the life I had, not just mourn the life I'm losing. I want people to laugh, to remember happy moments, to feel grateful for our time together, rather than just sad it's ending." These conversations were exhausting for both of them, but Harrison pushed through, determined to address every practical detail that might overwhelm Lily later. By month's end, the acquisition was complete. The Harrison Wells Foundation officially absorbed the Brennan Community Initiative, expanding its reach dramatically. A press release announced Lily's role as youth program advisor, a specially created position that would allow her to contribute meaningfully while still attending school. At the celebration dinner Martha organized, Harrison watched Lily accept congratulations from board members and staff. She handled the attention with grace, deflecting praise to the team while also clearly taking pride in her contributions. "She's something special," Daniel Chen said quietly beside Harrison. "You've done well with her." "She did it herself," Harrison replied. "I just tried to avoid screwing her up too badly." But privately, Harrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Whatever else he might have failed at in life, he'd helped shape an extraordinary human being. Lily would be okay. She'd stumble and struggle, certainly. Loss would mark her, as it marked everyone. But she had the tools, the support, and the character to build a meaningful life. And really, what more could any parent hope for? February arrived with unseasonable warmth and Harrison's rapidly declining health. The tremors had progressed to the point where he could no longer hide them. Tasks that had been automatic, signing documents, using utensils, typing on his phone, now required concentration and effort. His balance was so compromised that he'd fallen twice, both times fortunately at home where only Lily witnessed his vulnerability. "We need to hire help," Lily said after the second fall. "Someone medical who knows how to—" Not yet, Harrison interrupted. I'm not there yet. But he was, and they both knew it. The pretense that he could manage independently was wearing thin. Finally, Martha intervened, hiring a home health aide named Grace Okoro over Harrison's protests. Grace was in her 50s, a Nigerian immigrant who'd worked in elder care for 20 years. She was efficient, compassionate, and refreshingly direct in a way that cut through Harrison's resistance. I understand this is hard, Grace said during their first meeting. Accepting help feels like admitting defeat. But Mr. Wells, I'm not here to take over your life. I'm here to give you more of it. More time with your daughter, more energy for the things that matter, more dignity as your condition progresses. Her frankness was oddly comforting. Harrison agreed to a trial period, which quickly became permanent. Grace managed his medications, helped with mobility, and most importantly, provided Lily with respite from constant caretaking. You need to still be his daughter, not his nurse, Grace told Lily. That's my job. Your job is to spend time with him, make memories, be present without the burden of managing everything medical. The arrangement freed Harrison and Lily to focus on what mattered. They continued their Sunday explorations, though Harrison now required Grace's assistance, and they chose less physically demanding destinations. Museums, lectures, concerts, experiences that engaged their minds rather than testing Harrison's failing body. One Sunday, they attended a performance by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. As the music swelled around them, Harrison found himself overwhelmed by emotion. Not sadness exactly, but a profound awareness of beauty, of the artistic achievements humans were capable of creating, of all the wonderful things in the world he'd soon have to leave behind. Lily noticed his tears. Dad, are you okay? Just grateful, Harrison said. Grateful I got to share this with you. The foundation work continued as well. Lily was now deeply embedded in operations, attending board meetings and contributing meaningfully to strategic discussions. The other board members had shifted from skepticism to genuine respect, recognizing that her youth brought fresh perspectives rather than just inexperience. During one meeting, the board debated funding a controversial program that provided support services to homeless individuals struggling with addiction. Some members worried about enabling destructive behavior, about throwing money at problems without addressing root causes. Lily spoke up thoughtfully. I've been thinking about what Dad taught me. That charity should empower rather than simply provide. But empowerment requires meeting people where they are, not where we think they should be. This program doesn't just give people money or supplies. It provides stability, a safe place to sleep, regular meals, access to healthcare. That stability creates the foundation for recovery, for people to address the issues that led to homelessness in the first place. The program was approved. After the meeting, Harrison pulled Lily aside. That was well argued. You're starting to develop your own philosophy, not just echoing mine. Is that okay? It's perfect. You should challenge my thinking, develop your own perspectives. That's how you become your own person rather than just an extension of me. But not all lessons went smoothly. In mid-February, a situation arose that tested Lily's judgment in ways Harrison hadn't anticipated. A woman named Rebecca Walsh approached the foundation with a compelling story. She was a single mother raising 3 children, working 2 jobs but still struggling to make ends meet. She needed help with rent, medical bills, basic necessities. Lily was moved by Rebecca's situation and advocated for direct financial assistance. Martha and Harrison suggested connecting Rebecca with existing support programs instead. Food banks, housing assistance, healthcare subsidies. Why can't we just help her? Lily argued. We have the money. Her need is real. Isn't that what the foundation is for? It's more complicated than that, Harrison explained. If we start providing direct cash assistance to individuals, we'd be overwhelmed immediately. There are thousands of people in similar situations. We have to focus our resources on systemic solutions, programs that help many people rather than just one-time payments to individuals. Lily refused to accept this logic. Using her own allowance, she gave Rebecca $5,000, enough to cover immediate expenses. 2 weeks later, Rebecca returned asking for more money. She'd spent the initial amount on rent and bills as promised, but now had new emergencies, car repairs, unexpected medical costs, another crisis. I don't understand, Lily said, frustrated. I gave her enough to get stable. Stability isn't a one-time payment, Martha explained gently. It's an ongoing process. Rebecca's situation isn't unusual. When you're living on the edge, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. That's why systemic programs are more effective than individual charity. The lesson was painful, but valuable. Harrison watched Lily grapple with the limits of her own generosity, with the reality that good intentions didn't always translate into good outcomes. I wanted to help, Lily said tearfully. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were doing a kind thing, Harrison corrected. But kindness and effectiveness aren't always the same. This is why we have professional staff who understand these dynamics. Why we fund programs designed by experts rather than making emotional decisions about individual cases. So we just don't help people like Rebecca? We help them through referrals to appropriate services, through funding the programs that address underlying issues. It's less personally satisfying than handing someone cash, but it's more responsible and ultimately more impactful. The experience humbled Lily, but also matured her. She began asking harder questions about program effectiveness, about measuring impact, about the difference between alleviating immediate suffering and creating lasting change. As February progressed, Harrison noticed other shifts in Lily's worldview. She was developing nuance, understanding that most issues weren't simple, that good people could disagree about the best approaches to complex problems. During dinner one evening, they debated education policy, whether the foundation should fund traditional public schools or experimental charter programs. Both have merit, Lily said thoughtfully. Traditional schools provide stability and proven curricula. Charters can innovate and try new approaches. Maybe we should support both, see what works best in different contexts. That's wise, Harrison said. Ideological rigidity is the enemy of effective philanthropy. Stay flexible, keep evaluating, be willing to change course when evidence suggests you should. Another important lesson came through observing Grace's work with Harrison. As his condition deteriorated, he required increasing assistance with basic tasks, dressing, bathing, mobility. The loss of independence was humiliating, a daily reminder of everything the disease was stealing from him. But Grace handled it with such matter-of-fact dignity that it became bearable. She never patronized Harrison, never treated him as if he were fragile or childlike. She simply did what needed doing efficiently and moved on. That's how you help people, Harrison told Lily one evening after Grace had left. Not by making them feel like charity cases or objects of pity. You help by preserving their dignity, by treating them as fully human regardless of their circumstances. Is that how you want me to think of people we help through the foundation? It's how I want you to think of everyone. The most corrosive thing wealth can do is make you see other people as different from yourself, as problems to solve rather than as fellow humans facing challenges. Everyone wants dignity, Lily. Everyone wants to be seen and respected. Remember that. These conversations continued through February, each one adding another layer to Lily's education. Harrison was running out of time. He could feel it in his bones, in the increasing difficulty of basic functions, in the way his mind would fog unexpectedly. But he'd done the work. He'd taught her what mattered, shown her how to be good, given her the tools to navigate wealth responsibly. She'd make mistakes. Everyone did. But she had the foundation to learn from those mistakes rather than being destroyed by them. On the last day of February, as they sat together watching the sun set over Chicago, Harrison asked Lily what she'd learned over the past months. That nothing matters more than people, she said after a long pause. Not money, not success, not achievement. Just how we treat each other, how we show up for each other, how we make each other's lives better or worse through our choices. Harrison smiled. That's exactly right. I wish we had more time, Lily whispered. Me too, sweetheart, me too. But we've made the most of what we had. That's all anyone can do. March arrived with bitter cold, a final assault from winter before spring could establish itself. Harrison's decline accelerated. He'd begun having episodes of confusion, moments where he lost track of where he was or couldn't recognize familiar objects. Dr. Caldwell explained that this was expected, that the neurological damage was affecting cognitive function unpredictably. It won't be consistent, she warned. You'll have lucid periods and confused periods, sometimes switching rapidly. This is often the hardest phase for families, the uncertainty of not knowing which version of their loved one they'll encounter. Harrison hated the confusion more than any other symptom. The tremors, the lost mobility, the physical decline, all of that he could accept. But losing his mind, becoming unreliable in thought and memory, felt like a betrayal of who he fundamentally was. "I'm sorry," he told Lily after one particularly difficult episode where he'd forgotten her name for several terrifying minutes. "I'm sorry you have to see me like this." "Don't apologize," Lily said firmly. "You're still you, Dad. You're still here. That's what matters." But Harrison worried about what he might say or do during confused periods. He began recording messages, short videos for Lily to watch later, when the disease had progressed further. "I want you to remember that I love you," he said to the camera. "No matter what happens, no matter what I might say or do when I'm not myself, the core truth is that being your father has been the greatest honor of my life." He recorded dozens of these messages, each one addressing different scenarios or future milestones. For her graduation, "I'm so proud of you, not because of achievements or grades, but because of the person you've become." For her wedding, "Choose someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves what they see." For when she had children of her own, "Now you'll understand what Catherine and I felt. That love so vast it's almost frightening." The recordings were Harrison's way of extending his presence beyond his physical life, of ensuring Lily would hear his voice even when he was gone. Meanwhile, Lily was managing the expanded foundation with surprising capability. The integration of the Brennan Centers was proceeding smoothly, largely due to her careful attention to staff concerns and community needs. She'd established herself not as Harrison's daughter playing at philanthropy, but as a thoughtful leader in her own right. One afternoon, Martha stopped by the penthouse to brief Harrison on a situation at one of the Milwaukee centers. But instead of addressing Harrison, she turned to Lily. "I wanted your input on this," Martha said, spreading documents on the dining table. "We have competing proposals for using available space. One is for expanding job training programs. The other is for creating an arts education initiative for kids." Harrison watched as Lily asked probing questions, considered trade-offs, proposed creative solutions. She suggested splitting the space, using it for different purposes at different times. The compromise satisfied both needs without requiring either program to sacrifice their plans. "When did that happen?" Harrison asked Martha later. "When did she become the person you consult instead of just including as a courtesy?" "Gradually," Martha said. "But Harrison, she's ready. She's not just capable, she's exceptional. You've done your job. You can rest knowing the foundation is in excellent hands." But resting wasn't in Harrison's nature, even as his body insisted on it more frequently. He continued teaching when he could, though the lessons now came in shorter bursts, dictated by his energy levels. One lucid afternoon, he talked to Lily about failure. "I've focused a lot on teaching you how to succeed," Harrison said. "But failure is inevitable, and how you handle it matters more than whether it happens." He shared his biggest professional failures, businesses that collapsed, investments that went wrong, strategic decisions that proved disastrous. More importantly, he talked about what he'd learned from each failure. "The key is failing forward," Harrison explained. "You acknowledge the mistake, you analyze what went wrong, you extract whatever lessons you can, and then you move on without shame or excessive self-recrimination. Failure is only permanent if you let it define you." Lily absorbed this quietly. Harrison suspected she was thinking about more than just business failures. She was thinking about the ultimate failure approaching, his inability to beat this disease, to be there for her future. "This isn't failure," Harrison said, reading her thoughts. "Dying isn't failure, Lily. It's inevitable. What would be failure is if I wasted these final months in bitterness, if I let anger about what's being taken from me poison what time remains." "How do you not feel angry?" Lily asked. "Because I'm angry. I'm furious that this is happening." "I am angry," Harrison admitted. "But I'm also grateful. I could have died in that car accident with your mother. Instead, I got 3 more years. 3 years to watch you grow, to teach you, to tell you I love you." That's not nothing, Lily. That's a gift, even if it's not the gift I would have chosen. Another crucial conversation came when they discussed Harrison's decision to stop aggressive medical intervention. The medications are buying me time, Harrison explained. But the side effects are significant, and the time they're buying is decreasing. At some point soon, I'm going to choose comfort over extension. Focus on quality of life rather than length of life. When? Lily's voice was small. When I'm more confused than lucid. When the person I am is more gone than present. I don't want you remembering me as someone lost in cognitive fog, Lily. I want your last clear memories to be of me, still fundamentally myself. I want every minute I can have with you, Lily said. I don't care if you're confused. I don't care if you don't remember my name. I just want you here. I know, but that's not what I want. And this is my death, sweetheart. I need you to respect my choices about how I exit. The conversation was brutal, one of the hardest they'd ever had. But Harrison needed Lily to understand and accept his decisions, to not torture herself later with guilt over choices that weren't hers to make. As March continued, Harrison began saying goodbye to people. He invited old friends to visit, distant relatives, colleagues from various phases of his life. Each conversation followed a similar pattern, reminiscing, expressing gratitude, offering forgiveness for old slights, seeking forgiveness for his own failings. I'm making peace, Harrison explained to Lily, tying up loose ends. It's important to me that I don't leave unfinished business. One particularly emotional visit came from Harrison's younger brother, Michael, with whom he'd been estranged for over a decade following a dispute about their parents' estate. The wounds were old and deep, but Harrison reached out anyway. I should have handled things better, Harrison told Michael. I was arrogant and rigid. The money wasn't worth losing you. Michael, gray-haired and tired-looking, struggled with his own emotions. I was stubborn too. I let pride keep me from reaching out. I'm sorry, Harrison, for all of it. They spent an afternoon together, rebuilding a connection that had seemed irretrievably broken. Lily watched the reunion with fascination, seeing in real time the power of vulnerability and forgiveness. You have an uncle, Harrison told her after Michael left. Someone who will be there for you after I'm gone. That matters, Lily. Family matters, even imperfect family. Late in March, as the weather finally began warming, Harrison suggested one last trip. He wanted to take Lily to the lake house in Michigan, where he and Catherine had spent summers early in their marriage, before wealth and responsibility had consumed their lives. It's not fancy, Harrison warned. Just a small cottage on Lake Michigan. But it was where we were happiest. I want you to see it. The journey was challenging. Harrison required frequent stops, Grace's constant assistance, wheelchair access at every location. But they made it, arriving at a weathered cottage perched on a bluff overlooking the vast blue expanse of the lake. Your mother loved it here, Harrison said as they sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool breeze. She'd paint for hours, trying to capture the way the light changed across the water. She never quite got it the way she wanted, but she kept trying. They spent 3 days there, moving slowly, talking constantly. Harrison shared stories about Catherine. Some Lily had heard before. Many she hadn't. He painted a fuller picture of her mother, not idealizing her, but presenting her as she'd actually been. Complicated, creative, flawed, and deeply good. She would be so proud of you, Harrison said on their last evening, watching the sun set over the lake. She'd love the person you're becoming. I wish I remembered her better, Lily said. I have fragments, the smell of her perfume, the sound of her laugh, the way she'd sing in the car. But I can't remember full conversations or specific moments clearly. That's okay. Memory isn't about perfect recall. It's about carrying the essence of someone forward. You remember what matters, that she loved you, that she was good, that she made the world brighter. Everything else is details. Driving back to Chicago, Harrison felt a sense of completion. He'd shown Lily where he came from, shared the full story of her parents, connected her to her history. She was rooted now, grounded in a narrative larger than just herself. The pieces were in place. The lessons had been taught. The foundation, both literal and metaphorical, was solid. Now came the hardest part, letting go. April arrived like a whisper, spring asserting itself through budding trees and warming days. Harrison's decline had reached a new phase. More time spent sleeping than awake, more moments of confusion than clarity, more reliance on medication for comfort than treatment. Dr. Caldwell had adjusted his care plan to focus entirely on palliation, ensuring his remaining days were as peaceful as possible. "We're looking at weeks now, maybe a month," she told Lily gently when Harrison was sleeping. "His body is shutting down systematically. The progression will likely accelerate from here." Lily received this news with surprising composure. She'd been preparing for months, watching her father's slow diminishment, anticipating this moment. But knowing it was coming didn't make it less devastating. "Thank you for being honest with me," Lily said. "I need to know what to expect." Harrison's periods of lucidity became precious, islands of clarity in a sea of fog. During these moments, he focused entirely on Lily, using what energy he had to reinforce final lessons. One afternoon, as they sat together in the penthouse living room, Harrison asked Lily about her plans for the future. "I've been thinking about college," Lily said. "Maybe studying nonprofit management or public policy. Something that will help me do the foundation work better." "That's practical," Harrison said. "But Lily, don't let the foundation consume your entire life." "I made that mistake with business, letting one thing become everything. You're allowed to be more than just a philanthropist. You're allowed to be an artist, a friend, a person with interests that have nothing to do with charity. But the foundation is important. It is. But so are you. The foundation exists to serve you, not the other way around. If it ever stops bringing you meaning and starts feeling like obligation, you're allowed to step back, to hire people to manage it while you pursue other things." This was a new message, one that surprised Lily. "I thought you wanted me to run it. I want you to have the option to run it if it feeds your soul. But I don't want you trapped by my legacy, living the life I designed for you rather than the life you want." Harrison took her hand weakly. "Promise me you'll always..." "Check in with yourself. Always ask whether you're doing things because they matter to you or because you think I wanted you to, I promise." Another conversation centered on love and relationships, a topic they'd touched on before, but that Harrison now addressed with new urgency. "You're going to fall in love someday," Harrison said. "Multiple times, probably. Some of those loves will be wonderful. Some will hurt you. All of them will teach you something. How do I know when it's the right person? You don't, not with certainty. But look for someone who makes you more yourself rather than less. Someone who challenges you to grow without making you feel insufficient. Someone whose presence adds to your life without subtracting from who you are. Your mother was that for me. She made me better without requiring me to become different." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared I won't be able to love properly. That losing you and Mom will have broken something in me." "Loss does change us," Harrison acknowledged. "But it doesn't break our capacity to love. If anything, it deepens it. You'll love fiercely because you know how precious it is. You'll appreciate people because you understand how temporary everything is. Don't fear being broken, Lily. Fear being closed off." As April progressed, Harrison began having more bad days than good. The confusion would last hours, and when lucidity returned, he'd be exhausted and disoriented. Grace managed his care expertly, but even she couldn't hide the trajectory. He was dying, and dying relatively quickly now. Lily handled it with a strength that amazed Harrison during his clear moments. She continued attending school, managing her foundation responsibilities, maintaining some semblance of normal teenage life. But she also carved out every possible moment to sit with him, reading aloud when he couldn't focus enough to converse, simply holding his hand when words failed entirely. One evening, Lily brought her art supplies to his room and painted while he dozed. Harrison woke to find her absorbed in creating a landscape, the Michigan lake house, rendered in oils that captured something essential about the place. "That's beautiful," Harrison murmured. Lily looked up, smiling. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" "Tired, but clear for now." Harrison studied the painting. "You've captured it perfectly. The light, the feeling of peace. I'm going to hang it in my room," Lily said, "so I can remember that trip whenever I need to." "Good. Hold on to the happy memories. Lily, when grief comes, and it will come hard, those memories will be your anchors. They sat in comfortable silence, Lily painting while Harrison watched. It struck him that this was enough, that joy didn't require grand gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it was just sitting quietly with someone you loved, sharing space and time, being present together. Martha visited frequently during this period, providing both practical support and emotional companionship to Lily. They'd grown close over the months, Martha becoming a surrogate mother figure in ways that neither had explicitly acknowledged, but both recognized. "You're going to be okay," Martha told Lily one afternoon while Harrison slept. "You're stronger than you know. And you're not alone. You have me, you have Grace, you have Daniel, and the whole foundation team. We're your family now." "Thank you," Lily whispered. "For everything. For seeing me as more than just Harrison's daughter." "You've earned that on your own merit," Martha said firmly. "You're not riding anyone's coattails, Lily. You're exceptional in your own right." Near the middle of April, Harrison had what would prove to be his last truly lucid day. He woke feeling clearer than he had in weeks, his mind sharp despite his body's weakness. Recognizing the gift, he asked Lily to spend the entire day with him. They talked for hours, covering everything and nothing. Harrison shared final pieces of advice, answered Lily's questions, told stories he'd forgotten to tell before. But mostly they simply enjoyed each other's company, laughing at memories, sitting in comfortable silence, being father and daughter without the weight of impending loss. "I need to tell you something important," Harrison said as evening approached. "Something I want you to remember. Okay. My death is not your failure. You didn't fail to save me, to heal me, to love me enough to make me stay. This disease was always going to win. That was determined before you ever knew I was sick. Whatever happens, whatever guilt you feel afterward, remember that. You didn't fail me, Lily. You gave me the most beautiful final year of my life." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to do this. How to watch you go. One moment at a time," Harrison said. "You don't have to be strong or brave or any of the things people will tell you to be. You just have to be present, to let yourself feel whatever you feel, to survive it." "Will you know?" Lily asked. "At the end? Will you know I'm there?" "I believe so. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep I'll know. And Lily, wherever I go next, if there's anything after this, I'll carry you with me. You're woven into my soul. Death can't change that." They held each other as sunset painted the city in gold and crimson, neither wanting to let go, both knowing they had to. That night, Harrison's condition deteriorated sharply. He slipped into a semi-conscious state, responsive to some stimuli but mostly absent, his body preparing for the final transition. "It's time," Dr. Caldwell said gently. "Days now, not weeks." Lily barely left his side after that, sleeping in a chair beside his bed, waking whenever he stirred. Grace helped her maintain basic self-care, eating, showering, stepping outside briefly for fresh air, but otherwise Lily held vigil. Harrison drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally surfacing enough to squeeze Lily's hand or murmur her name. During one such moment, Lily leaned close. "I love you, Dad, I'm here." "I'm right here." Harrison's lips moved, forming words Lily had to strain to hear. "Good person. Be good." "I will," Lily promised, tears streaming down her face. "I promise, Dad, I'll be good. I'll make you proud." Whether Harrison heard or understood was unclear, but a small smile crossed his face before he slipped back into unconsciousness. 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning in mid-April, with spring sunshine flooding the room, Harrison Wells took his last breath. Lily was holding his hand, Grace was monitoring his vitals, and Martha was sitting nearby offering silent support. It was peaceful. It was inevitable. It was devastating. And yet somewhere beneath the grief, Lily felt something else. Gratitude. Gratitude for the warning that had let them prepare, for the lessons her father had taught, for the foundation he'd built within her, for the time they'd had even as it ended. Harrison had given her everything he could in the time they'd had. Now she'd have to figure out how to carry those gifts forward into a life without him. The days following Harrison's death blurred together for Lily. Well-meaning people filled the penthouse, friends, colleagues, distant relatives emerging from years of absence. They offered condolences that felt hollow, shared memories that seemed to belong to a different version of her father than the one she'd known. brought casseroles and flowers that accumulated until the apartment resembled a funeral home. Martha managed most of it, protecting Lily from the most overwhelming intrusions while ensuring practical matters were handled. Funeral arrangements, legal paperwork, the 1,000 administrative details that death demanded. Martha coordinated it all, allowing Lily to simply exist in her grief. The funeral service took place on a Saturday morning, exactly as Harrison had specified. Small, intimate, held at a chapel on the north side with only 50 guests, the people who'd actually known and loved him rather than the hundreds who would have attended a public memorial. Lily delivered a eulogy, her voice shaking but clear. She talked about the lessons Harrison had taught, the kind of man he'd been, the legacy he'd left. She didn't pretend he'd been perfect. She mentioned his regrets, his mistakes, his own acknowledgement that he'd prioritized wrong things for too long. But he learned, Lily said to the assembled mourners. And he spent his final year teaching me what he'd learned, trying to save me from making the same mistakes. That's what love is, not perfection. But the willingness to share your hard-won wisdom, to be vulnerable about your failures, to give everything you can to prepare someone for a world without you. After the service, during the reception at the foundation offices, Lily found herself surrounded by people sharing Harrison's stories. His college roommate talked about late-night philosophy debates. A former employee reminisced about Harrison's habit of remembering everyone's birthday. Daniel Chen shared the story of their early business days when they'd been broke and ambitious and convinced they'd change the world. He did change the world, Daniel said. Maybe not in the ways we imagined back then, but in ways that matter more. Through the foundation, through you, through the lives he touched. That's legacy, Lily. That's what endures. The reception finally ended, and Lily returned to the penthouse that suddenly felt cavernous and empty. Grace had stayed on through the funeral to help with the transition, but she'd be leaving soon. There was no patient to care for anymore. "What do I do now?" Lily asked Martha as they sat together in the living room that evening. "How do I just keep going?" "One day at a time," Martha said gently. "1 hour at a time if that's all you can manage. There's no right way to grieve, Lily. You feel what you feel, you survive it, and slowly, very slowly, it gets a bit easier." Over the following weeks, Lily discovered that grief was exhausting in ways she hadn't anticipated. Everything required enormous effort, getting out of bed, eating, maintaining basic routines. School felt pointless, the foundation overwhelming, social interaction impossible. She watched the videos Harrison had recorded, spending hours listening to his voice, absorbing his final messages. Some made her cry. Some made her angry. How dare he try to parent from beyond the grave? Some provided comfort, confirmation that he'd known her, understood her, loved her exactly as she was. One video, recorded for no specific occasion, simply said, "If you're watching this, you're probably having a hard day. That's okay. You're allowed to have hard days, Lily. You're allowed to fall apart. Just remember to put yourself back together afterward, and remember that you're never really alone. I'm with you in everything you learned from me. Everything you carry forward, everything you choose to be." Lily clung to these messages, especially on the days when grief felt like drowning. She also found unexpected comfort in the community Harrison had helped her build. Martha checked in daily, sometimes just to sit quietly together. Grace stopped by weekly to see how Lily was managing. Daniel took her to lunch, sharing business wisdom and serving as a sounding board for foundation decisions. The foundation staff rallied around Lily, protective of their young leader, while also trusting her to guide them. They'd seen her capability over the past months, watched her grow from an uncertain teenager to a thoughtful leader. They believed in her, which helped Lily begin believing in herself again. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after Harrison's death, Lily returned to the Pacific Garden mission where she'd first volunteered with her father. She served meals alongside Joseph, the formerly homeless teacher she'd met months earlier. "I heard about your father," Joseph said. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." They worked in silence for a while, the familiar rhythm of serving food oddly comforting. Finally, Joseph said, "You know what I remember most about Harrison? He never treated me like I was less than him. Rich man like that, he could have lorded it over everyone. Instead, he served alongside us, listened to our stories, saw us as people. That's rare. He thought everyone deserved dignity, Lily said quietly. And he passed that on to you. I've watched you serve here. You have his heart. That's his legacy, living on through you. The conversation reminded Lily that grief wasn't just about absence. It was also about recognizing what remained, the values instilled, the lessons learned, the way love changed you permanently. Another milestone came when Lily finally went through Harrison's study, the room where he'd spent countless hours working and writing those final letters. Martha helped, sitting beside her as Lily opened drawers and sorted through papers. "Look at this," Martha said, pulling out a folder. Inside were dozens of photographs, Lily as a baby, as a toddler, throughout her childhood. On the back of each photo, Harrison had written a memory. "First day of kindergarten. So brave even though I could. Till she was scared. Piano recital at 7. Played beautifully, despite forgetting the middle section. 10th. Birthday, finally tall enough to reach the kitchen counter." Lily read through them all, tears streaming down her face. Harrison had documented everything, paid attention to details she'd assumed he'd forgotten in his business-focused life. "He loved you so much," Martha said unnecessarily. "Everything he did was ultimately about you." The study also contained Harrison's business records, which Lily needed to begin addressing. The company, the investments, the complex financial structures, all of it was now her responsibility to understand and manage. "I'm not ready for this," Lily said, looking at the stacks of documents. "Maybe not," Martha agreed. "But you will be, and you don't have to figure it all out immediately. You have advisors, trustees, professionals whose job is to help you navigate this. Take your time, ask questions, learn gradually." Over the following months, Lily did exactly that. She met with lawyers and accountants, attended board meetings, slowly familiarized herself with the empire Harrison had built. It was overwhelming, but beneath the complexity, she found Harrison's values, investments chosen for ethical reasons, business decisions made with employee welfare in mind, a consistent thread of trying to use capital for good. "He really walked the talk," Daniel observed during one meeting. "A lot of wealthy people claim to invest ethically, but Harrison actually did it, even when it cost him returns." Lily took comfort in discovering these patterns, these concrete expressions of the values her father had tried to teach her. The money was just money. What mattered was how he'd chosen to use it, the impact he'd prioritized, the change he'd tried to create. She also discovered that Harrison had made provisions for her mistakes. The trusts included latitude for her to explore different interests, to invest in projects that might fail, to learn through experience rather than just through cautious preservation of wealth. "He wanted you to have room to figure things out," Harrison's lawyer explained. "To not feel so burdened by responsibility that you couldn't take risks or pursue passions." This revelation felt like permission to not have everything figured out immediately, to stumble and learn, to be human rather than perfect. By summer, Lily had established new rhythms. School occupied her mornings. Foundation work filled afternoons several times a week. She'd carved out time for art, for friends, for the normal teenage experiences Harrison had wanted her to have. The grief remained, some days lighter, some days crushing, but she was learning to carry it. Learning that she could miss her father desperately while still experiencing joy. Learning that honoring his memory meant living fully rather than getting stuck in mourning. One afternoon, Lily visited the Michigan Lake House alone. She sat on the porch where she'd last sat with Harrison, watching the light change across the water just as he'd described Catherine doing years ago. "I'm trying, Dad," she said aloud to the empty air. "I'm trying to be good, to do the work right, to become the person you hoped I'd be. Some days it's really hard, but I'm trying." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and water, and Lily felt, if not peace, then acceptance. This was her life now, shaped by loss but not defined by it, carrying her father's legacy while building her own. She would stumble, she would make mistakes, but she would also create beauty, generate positive change, love deeply, and live intentionally, just as Harrison had taught her. Summer faded into fall, and Lily marked her first year without her father. The anniversary of his death arrived in April, a gray, rainy day that matched her melancholy mood. She spent it at his grave, speaking to him as if he could hear, updating him on her progress, admitting her struggles, seeking guidance that could no longer come. But she'd survived. That simple fact felt monumental. She'd endured what seemed unsurvivable and continued forward. The foundation was thriving under her leadership. The Brennan Centers had integrated successfully, their programs reaching tens of thousands of people monthly. Lily had initiated several new projects of her own, including a mentorship program matching at-risk youth with successful professionals, and a fund providing micro-grants to grassroots community organizations. "You've found your voice," Martha observed during a board meeting, where Lily presented her strategic vision for the next 5 years. "These aren't Harrison's ideas you're implementing. They're yours." That's exactly what should happen. Lily had also made peace with Wells Technology Solutions. She decided to remain the controlling shareholder, but to maintain arm's-length involvement, trusting the executive team to run day-to-day operations while she focused on the foundation. It felt like the right balance, preserving what Harrison built while pursuing her own path. Her relationship with the company's leadership was professional and respectful. They'd initially been skeptical of taking direction from a teenager, but Lily's thoughtful questions and willingness to learn had won them over. "Your father would be proud," Robert Fitzgerald, the CFO, told her after she'd made a particularly astute observation about market positioning. "You have his strategic mind." But Lily had also developed aspects Harrison hadn't possessed: a collaborative leadership style, an ease with emotional intelligence, an artistic sensibility that brought creativity to problem-solving. She was becoming a synthesis of both parents, plus something uniquely her own. In the fall of her junior year, Lily began the college application process. She'd decided to apply to schools with strong nonprofit management programs, but she'd also included several with excellent art programs. Harrison's words about not letting the foundation consume everything echoed in her mind. "I want to study both," she told Madison one evening as they worked on applications together. "Art and nonprofit management. I want to learn how to run the foundation well, but I also want to develop my painting. Both matter to me." "Your dad would approve," Madison said. "Yeah, he would." That December, Lily organized a memorial event at the foundation, not for Harrison, but honoring him. They invited all the program participants, staff, board members, and community partners to share a meal and celebrate the year's accomplishments. Harrison Wells believed that wealth was a tool for creating positive change, Lily said in her speech. He believed that everyone deserved dignity, opportunity, and support. He believed that the measure of a life wasn't what you accumulated, but what you gave away. This foundation is his legacy, but it's also all of ours. Every person here contributes to making his vision real. Thank you for that. After her speech, person after person approached Lily to share how the foundation had impacted their lives. A single mother whose childcare scholarship had allowed her to complete nursing school. A teenager whose after-school program had kept him engaged and safe. An elderly man whose free health screening had caught a serious condition early. "Your father's generosity saved my life," the man said simply. "Thank you for continuing his work." These conversations reminded Lily why the work mattered, why carrying Harrison's legacy forward was both burden and gift. She was helping people, not in some abstract way, but in concrete, life-changing ways. That gave everything meaning. As winter settled over Chicago, Lily found herself thinking about the future more hopefully than she'd thought possible a year earlier. She'd survived loss. She'd learned to lead. She'd discovered her own voice and vision while honoring her father's memory. One evening, she pulled out the painting she'd done at the lake house, the landscape capturing that final trip with Harrison. She'd never properly finished it, setting it aside after his death because it hurt too much to look at. Now she returned to it, adding final touches, refining the light, deepening the shadows. As she worked, she thought about everything Harrison had taught her, about goodness, generosity, dignity, love, about using privilege responsibly, about treating everyone with respect regardless of their circumstances, about building something that would outlast his physical presence. "I get it now, Dad," Lily said softly as she painted. "I understand what you were trying to do. You weren't just teaching me about running a foundation or managing money. You were teaching me how to be human, how to live a life that matters, how to love deeply, how to use whatever advantages I have to make things better for others. She stepped back, studying the completed painting. It captured something essential, not just the physical beauty of the lake house, but the feeling of that time with her father, the peace and connection and love that had filled those final days together. Below the painting, she added a small inscription, "Legacy is love made visible." That became Lily's guiding principle. Everything she did with the foundation, with her wealth, with her opportunities, it was all about making love visible, about translating the devotion her father had poured into her into concrete actions that helped others. She didn't get everything right. She made mistakes in judgment, trusted the wrong people occasionally, had to learn hard lessons about institutional change and human nature. But she learned from those mistakes without being destroyed by them, exactly as Harrison had taught her. By spring of her senior year, Lily had been accepted to several excellent universities. She chose Northwestern, close enough to maintain active involvement with the foundation, far enough to establish some independence, strong programs in both her areas of interest. On what would have been Harrison's 50th birthday, Lily organized a special event, the dedication of the Harrison Wells Center for Community Empowerment in Englewood. The facility, funded by the foundation, would house multiple programs serving one of Chicago's most underserved neighborhoods. At the ribbon cutting, Lily spoke about her father's journey, from successful businessman who'd initially equated wealth with achievement, to philanthropist who'd learned that meaning came from impact, to dying man who'd spent his final year teaching his daughter what truly mattered. "He changed," Lily said. "That's what I want people to remember most about Harrison Wells. He wasn't born understanding these things. He learned them, often the hard way through mistakes and regrets and gradual growth. And when he finally understood what mattered, he dedicated everything to passing that wisdom forward." Looking around at the gathered crowd, foundation staff, community members, old friends and colleagues, Lily felt Harrison's presence, not as grief but as influence, not as absence but as the values he'd instilled that she now carried forward. "This center isn't a memorial," Lily continued. "It's a continuation. Every person who finds support here, every family that finds opportunity, every child who discovers their potential, that's Harrison Wells still making a difference in the world. That's his legacy, alive and growing." After the ceremony, as the community explored their new center, Martha pulled Lily aside. "You've done it," Martha said. "Everything Harrison hoped for you, you've achieved it. You've become exactly the kind of person he wanted you to be." "I'm still learning," Lily replied. "I'll always be learning." "That's what makes you his true heir," Martha said. "Not the money or the position, but the commitment to growth, to doing better, to using whatever you have to help others." That evening, Lily returned to the penthouse, which she'd decided to keep, despite its painful associations, because it connected her to family history. She sat in Harrison's study, surrounded by his books and papers, and wrote in the journal she'd been keeping since his death. "Dear Dad," she wrote, "I turned 18 today. I'm legally an adult now, with full control over the inheritance and the foundation. It's terrifying and exciting and overwhelming all at once, but I think I'm ready. Not because I have everything figured out, I definitely don't, but because you spent your last year preparing me, teaching me, showing me what matters. You gave me tools to navigate uncertainty, values to guide my choices, and examples to follow. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to struggle and doubt myself. But I'm also going to do good work, help people, create positive change, just like you taught me. Thank you, Dad, for everything. The lessons, the love, the faith you had in me. I promise to honor it all by living a life that matters, by being generous and kind, by using my advantages to lift others up. I promise to be good. That's your legacy, living on through me." 5 years later, Lily Wells stood before an audience of nonprofit leaders at a conference in Boston, delivering a keynote speech about effective philanthropy. At 23, she'd become a recognized voice in the sector, known for thoughtful grant-making, innovative programs, and a collaborative approach that empowered rather than imposed. The foundation had tripled its reach during her leadership, now operating in 12 states and serving over 500,000 people annually. But more impressive than the numbers was the quality of the impact, programs designed with deep community input. initiatives that addressed root causes rather than just symptoms, partnerships that built sustainable change. My father taught me that wealth is ultimately meaningless unless it creates positive impact, Lily told the assembled crowd. But impact isn't about imposing your vision on others. It's about asking what communities need, then providing resources and getting out of the way. It's about partnership, not paternalism. After her speech, she was approached by dozens of people, some seeking advice, some offering collaboration, some simply wanting to share how the Foundation's work had touched their lives. Lily engaged with each person genuinely, remembering Harrison's lesson about treating everyone with dignity regardless of their position or what they could offer in return. That evening, she called Martha, now officially retired from the Foundation, but still serving as Lily's informal advisor and surrogate mother. The speech went well, Lily reported, though I'm exhausted from all the networking. Your father always said the hardest part of his job was the social performance, Martha reminded her. But you do it with more grace than he ever did. You actually seem to enjoy connecting with people. I do, Lily admitted. Maybe that's the artist in me, finding beauty in human stories. Genuine interest in individual experiences. She'd graduated from Northwestern the previous spring with a double major in nonprofit management and studio art. Her senior thesis exhibition had been a series of paintings depicting the people and places the Foundation served, a visual narrative of impact that had garnered significant attention. Critics praised her technical skill, but more importantly, they'd recognized the empathy and understanding in her work. These weren't paintings of subjects. They were collaborations with communities, visual stories told with permission and participation. One painting hung in Lily's apartment, a portrait of Joseph from the Pacific Garden Mission, who'd become a friend and occasional advisor. He'd successfully completed substance abuse treatment and now worked as a peer counselor, helping others navigate recovery. His transformation represented everything the Foundation aspired to create. Not rescue, but support for people rescuing themselves. Beyond the Foundation, Lily had built a full life. She'd dated, loved, had her heart broken, learned that romantic relationships were complicated and messy and worthwhile. She'd maintained deep friendships, traveled, explored interests that had nothing to do with philanthropy. Are you happy? Madison asked during a visit to Chicago. They'd remained close through college despite attending different schools, their friendship deepening through shared experiences of loss. Madison had lost her father to cancer during their freshman year. I am, Lily said truthfully. Not every minute, that's not realistic. But overall, yes. I'm doing work that matters, building relationships I value, creating art I'm proud of. I think that's what Dad meant by a good life. She still missed Harrison, would always miss him. But the grief had transformed from sharp agony to gentle melancholy, present but not consuming. She'd learned to carry both loss and joy, to hold space for complex emotions without being overwhelmed by them. One afternoon, Lily visited the Michigan Lake House, which she'd restored and now used for personal retreats. Sitting on the porch where she'd last sat with Harrison, she reflected on the journey from 15-year-old girl devastated by her father's diagnosis to the woman she'd become. Harrison had given her a year, 12 months of intensive teaching, deliberate preparation, carefully constructed lessons. At the time, it had seemed both inadequate and overwhelming. How could a year possibly be enough to prepare for a lifetime without him? But she understood now that the gift wasn't just the lessons themselves. It was the framework for continuous growth, the commitment to being better, the understanding that goodness wasn't a destination, but a practice requiring constant attention. Every major decision Lily made, she asked herself, what would Dad think? Am I using my advantages responsibly? Am I treating people with dignity? Am I creating positive impact? Not because she was trying to please a ghost, but because Harrison had successfully internalized his values in her, made them her own through patient teaching and personal example. She'd expanded on his work while staying true to its core principles. The Foundation bore Harrison's name, but it reflected Lily's vision. More collaborative, more community-driven, more willing to take risks on innovative approaches. That fall, on the 10-year anniversary of Catherine's death and 7 years after Harrison's, Lily organized a special Foundation event, launching the Wells Family Legacy Initiative, a program providing comprehensive support to single-parent families. My mother died when I was 12, Lily told the audience at the launch. My father died when I was 16. Those losses shaped everything about who I became. But I was extraordinarily privileged. I had financial security, excellent support systems, access to resources most grieving children never receive. This program is designed to provide some of that support to families facing loss without those advantages. Counseling, financial assistance, educational support, mentorship, everything a child might need to navigate grief and build a future despite loss. The initiative was funded primarily by Lily's personal wealth. She'd decided to give away the majority of her inheritance over her lifetime, maintaining only enough to live comfortably and ensure her own family's future security. What's the point of having money if you don't use it to help people? She'd told her financial advisors, who'd been skeptical of the plan. I didn't earn this wealth, I inherited it. The ethical thing is to circulate it back into the world. This decision would have made Harrison proud, Lily knew. He'd spent his life learning that wealth was a tool rather than an end goal. She'd internalized that lesson so thoroughly that keeping more than she needed felt wrong. At 25, Lily Wells had become exactly what her father had hoped. A good person using her advantages to create positive change, living a meaningful life, treating others with dignity, carrying forward his values while developing her own voice. She fell in love with a woman named Sarah, a public interest lawyer whose commitment to justice matched Lily's commitment to philanthropy. They built a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. Exactly the kind of relationship Harrison had described wanting for his daughter. He would have loved you, Lily told Sarah. He'd appreciate your intelligence, your principles, your refusal to compromise on what matters. I wish I could have met him, Sarah replied. But I see him in you, in your generosity, your thoughtfulness, the way you approach everything with intention. When Lily and Sarah decided to marry, Lily wore Catherine's wedding ring alongside her own. At the ceremony, she placed flowers at an empty seat, honoring both parents, acknowledging their presence through absence, their influence through the person she'd become. In her vows, Lily promised Sarah, "I'll be good to you. I'll be honest and kind and generous. I'll treat you with dignity always. I'll work to make your life better through my presence." These are the lessons my father taught me about love, that it's active, intentional, demonstrated through choices rather than just feelings. The wedding was intimate, held at the Michigan Lake House where some of Lily's best memories with Harrison resided. As the sun set over the water, creating the kind of light Catherine had tried to capture, and Lily now painted regularly, she felt complete in a way she'd wondered if she'd ever feel again after such profound loss. 10 years after Harrison's death, Lily sat down to write him a letter, something she did periodically when she needed to process major life events or seek guidance. "Dear Dad, I'm 30 now. An actual adult, not just technically but in ways that matter. Established career, healthy relationship, sense of purpose, understanding of who I am. I wanted to tell you that it worked. Everything you tried to teach me in that final year, all those lessons and experiences and conversations, they took root. I'm living the life you hoped I'd live. I'm using wealth responsibly. I'm treating people well. I'm doing work that matters. But I'm also living my own life, making my own choices, sometimes disagreeing with what you might have wanted. I hope you'd be okay with that, proud that I've developed my own voice rather than just echoing yours. The foundation is thriving. The company is successful. But more importantly, I'm happy. I've built meaningful relationships, created art I'm proud of, found joy despite everything. You gave me a year to learn how to live without you. It wasn't enough time. It could never have been enough. But it was something, and I've tried to honor it by living well, by being good, by carrying your legacy forward while building my own. Thank you, Dad, for loving me enough to prepare me, for teaching me what matters, for showing me that goodness is a practice rather than an achievement, for being human enough to share your mistakes so I could learn from them, for those final months when you gave me everything you had left. I'm good. I'm really good. And that's because of you. Love always, Lily. She sealed the letter and placed it in a box with dozens of others, a one-sided correspondence spanning years, a way of maintaining connection across the boundary of death. That evening, as Lily and Sarah sat together watching the Chicago sunset, Lily thought about legacy. What it meant, how it manifested, why it mattered. Harrison Wells was gone. But his influence remained. In the foundation bearing his name, in the lives it touched, in the values Lily carried forward, in the example she set for others. Legacy, Lily had learned, wasn't about monuments or fame, or even being remembered. It was about the positive impact that rippled outward from your choices, the people you influenced to be better, the changes you created that outlasted your physical presence. Her father had given her that, not just wealth or opportunity, but a framework for living meaningfully, for translating privilege into purpose, for being good in a world that often rewarded other things. And now she was passing it forward, through the foundation's work, through the example she set, through the future she was building with Sarah. That was legacy. That was love made visible. That was everything Harrison had hoped for when he began teaching his daughter, with finite time and infinite love, how to live a good life. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.